The prison gates opened with a loud clang, echoing across the yard where dozens of men moved about, some walking, some sitting in small groups, others just standing, staring at nothing in particular. The new guy stepped out of the transport van, his hands cuffed in front, his posture calm and unshaken. Every eye turned toward him, sizing him up, judging him. There was a certain stillness about him that drew attention. He didn't look around nervously, didn't shuffle his feet, and didn't speak unless spoken to. That alone made some inmates uneasy. The guards escorted him down the narrow corridors lined with high fences, keeping a watchful eye on the crowd of prisoners. The new guy didn't make any sudden movements, didn't flinch at the stares, and didn't try to talk. He simply walked with a quiet confidence that made people curious and a little wary. In a place like this, silence could be more threatening than words. By the time he reached the main yard, whispers started spreading. Some inmates leaned on fences, trying to get a better look at the newcomer. "Who's this guy?" Someone muttered. "Looks like he doesn't even care we're watching." Another replied, "Bet he's soft. They all think they can walk in here calm and quiet." A group of men, known for making life difficult for newcomers, noticed him immediately. They were tall, broad, and carried an air of aggression that made the yard tense whenever they moved. They nudged each other, smirking, and whispered plans, eager to make this new guy their first victim. For them, it was a game of power. Whoever the new guy was, he needed to be tested. The new guy was led to his cell. He looked around briefly, noting the bars, the small cot, and the rough walls. Everything was standard, yet he didn't seem fazed. He calmly placed his bag on the cot and sat down for a moment, stretching slightly just to loosen up. There was a rhythm to his movements, as if he was already preparing for something. Not out of fear, but readiness. That night, the whispers continued. Prison life was all about reputation. The new guy had none, which made him vulnerable. But some inmates could sense that he wasn't ordinary. There was a certain quiet strength in the way he carried himself, the way he didn't respond to provocations, and the way he observed everything with sharp eyes. The next morning, breakfast in the dining hall was chaotic. Inmates pushed and shoved, grabbing food as quickly as they could. The new guy walked in slowly, not rushing. He carried himself with calm authority. A few of the more confident inmates saw this as a challenge and tried to intimidate him. One man bumped into him, hard, trying to push him off balance. The new guy didn't flinch. He steadied himself effortlessly and gave a small, measured nod, almost acknowledging the push without reacting with aggression. Some inmates started to murmur. "Who does this guy think he is?" One muttered. "He doesn't even move when we push him." The group that had been planning to test him grinned. This was their opportunity to see if he was really as quiet and calm as he seemed, or if he would snap by midday. The first test was set. During yard time, the group cornered him near the wall. They circled him slowly, moving like predators, talking trash and trying to provoke him. The new guy didn't speak. He simply stood there, relaxed, his eyes scanning each one of them carefully, noting their stance, their balance, and the way they moved. He didn't make a single unnecessary movement, but there was a readiness in his posture that made the men hesitate for a moment. "Hey, new guy, think you can handle yourself here?" One of them sneered, stepping closer. The new guy tilted his head slightly, studying him, and then simply said, "I handle what I need to handle." His voice was calm, low, and steady. Not loud, but commanding. It sent a subtle warning. The group exchanged glances, unsure if they should continue or wait. The tension in the yard grew. Other inmates watched quietly from a distance, sensing something different about this man. He wasn't like the others who arrived scared, nervous, or overly aggressive. There was a control in his presence that demanded attention. Even the guards noticed, giving each other slight nods. One of the men decided to test him physically. He swung a fist toward the new guy's face, expecting resistance or panic. But the new guy didn't just block it. He moved with precision, sidestepping, grabbing the man's wrist, and twisting it in a controlled manner that left the attacker off balance, but unharmed. The move was quick, fluid, and clean. The yard went silent for a second, then murmurs erupted. "You seeing this?" whispered one inmate to another. "This isn't just luck. He knows what he's doing." Another added, "Better back off. You can't mess with this guy." The rest of the group tried again. More cautiously this time, circling him, throwing punches that he deftly avoided, countering with controlled moves that showed skill, not anger. It was clear to everyone watching that this was someone with serious training. Someone who knew how to fight but didn't need to show off. The new guy's approach wasn't violent for the sake of violence. It was precise, measured, and almost like a demonstration of mastery. By the time the bell rang, signaling the end of yard time, the group of bullies had been embarrassed in front of the other inmates. They retreated, glaring but silent. The whispers started spreading through the yard. "He's not just some new guy," one said. "This man is trained. Don't mess with him." Others nodded, sharing the news quickly. Reputation in prison was everything, so the new guy had already earned his. Back in his cell, he sat quietly, reflecting on the day. He knew the challenges would continue. Every day would bring new tests, new threats, and new attempts at intimidation. But he wasn't worried. He had faced worse and survived, and this place was no different. He simply needed to stay aware, stay calm, and handle each situation as it came. Night fell. The prison settled into a tense quiet. The new guy lay on his cot, eyes open for a while, thinking about the next day. But he wasn't anxious. He was ready. He had the skills, the experience, and the mindset to survive and command respect without unnecessary conflict. The other inmates, meanwhile, continued to whisper about the new guy, wondering who he really was and what he had done before ending up here. The legend of the newcomer began quietly, just as he intended. One controlled encounter at a time. The next morning, the prison yard was alive with activity more crowded than the day before. Men were stretching, exercising, talking in low tones, and sizing each other up. The new guy walked in quietly, observing everything, as if he already knew the patterns of the place. Some inmates glanced at him, wondering if yesterday's events had rattled him, but he showed no sign of fear or stress. His calm demeanor made some uneasy and others curious. The group that had tried to intimidate him yesterday was still simmering with frustration. They had expected an easy target, and instead they had been shown skill and control. One of them muttered under his breath, "We can't just let him walk around like this. We need to do something." They huddled together, whispering, planning, and trying to come up with a way to get back at the newcomer. But each plan was tested in their minds against the memory of his effortless movements, and doubts crept in. During yard time, one of the smaller inmates tried a subtle move, bumping into the new guy and shoving him slightly while pretending it was an accident. The new guy turned smoothly, catching the man's arm, and gave a small shake that caused him to stumble forward, keeping him unhurt, but sending a clear warning. The man quickly apologized, realizing that the new guy was not someone to test. The word spread quickly. In a prison, news travels fast, especially when it involves someone who isn't ordinary. Other inmates started observing the new guy more closely, curious to see how he would handle the pressure of this place. Some wanted to test him themselves, while others decided it was safer to keep their distance. Respect, or at least caution, was beginning to grow around him during a work period in the prison, where inmates were assigned tasks like cleaning, maintenance, and moving supplies. The new guy was assigned to a group that included a few of the men who had tried to challenge him. They exchanged short glances and whispered, trying to undermine him without drawing attention from the guards. One of them made a sarcastic comment, expecting a reaction. The new guy simply nodded, continuing his task, not giving them the satisfaction of a verbal fight. Later that day, one of the group decided to escalate the situation. They cornered the new guy in a hallway, trying to make him feel trapped. The group was larger than yesterday, a mix of men trying to prove themselves. They surrounded him, throwing verbal insults and trying to provoke a reaction. The new guy stood his ground, not panicking, not raising his voice. His eyes scanned each man, noting how they moved, how tense their muscles were, and where their balance could be exploited. Suddenly, one of them lunged forward. The new guy moved with precision, stepping to the side, grabbing the attacker's arm, using his momentum to guide him past him and into the wall gently. The other inmates froze for a moment, shocked at the control and skill on display. The new guy didn't hit anyone unnecessarily. He wasn't angry or reckless. He was precise, neutral, almost like a professional showing a technique without aggression. A few other inmates tried to rush him at the same time. The new guy shifted, blocked, and maneuvered each one with fluid, practiced movements. It was clear that he was trained in combat, not for show, but for efficiency and control. Every move was calculated, conserving energy, while keeping the upper hand. Within minutes, the group's attempt to intimidate him ended in their retreat. Some held their pride in check, others muttered under their breath, realizing they had underestimated him. By mid-afternoon, story of the hallway incident spread quickly through the prison. Inmates began to whisper about the newcomer's past, speculating about who he was and what he had done before arriving here. Some said he must have military experience. Others believed he had been trained in martial arts. The truth didn't matter as much as the image he had created, someone to be respected, someone not to be challenged lightly. During recreation later in the day, the new guy sat on a bench, watching the others. Noticing small details, who moved together, who was likely to start trouble, who stayed silent. A few inmates approached him cautiously, curious and respectful, asking simple questions. He answered briefly with the same calm tone that had defined him from the start. He wasn't seeking attention, but he didn't avoid it either. People began to understand that he wasn't there to make enemies, but that he could handle any situation that came his way. That evening, while the prison quieted down for dinner, a few inmates who had been the most aggressive yesterday came to talk to him, not in challenge but in curiosity. They asked about his background indirectly, trying to understand why he was so confident and unshakable. The new guy shared very little, giving vague answers, but his presence alone communicated more than words ever could. The conversation ended with mutual acknowledgement. Respect had been earned, even without friendship. Back in his cell later that night, the new guy reflected on the day. He knew the challenges of prison life weren't just physical. Mental strength, observation, and patience were just as important. He had faced physical confrontations today, but the real test was maintaining calm and control. He lay on his cot, thinking about strategy, awareness, and how to maintain his reputation without unnecessary violence. In this place, every action could have consequences, and he was determined to navigate them wisely. Meanwhile, other inmates continued talking about him in whispers and small groups. Some were planning future moves, others were reconsidering past mistakes. The new guy's calm but firm responses had shifted the balance of respect in the prison. For the first time, the newcomers weren't entirely powerless. They could observe and learn. And for the seasoned inmates, there was someone new to watch. Someone whose skills demanded attention and caution. By the time the lights went out, the prison had settled into a tense but quieter night. The new guy remained alert, ready for whatever would come next. He understood that his journey in this place had just begun, and every day would bring new challenges. But for now, he had proven himself, gained respect, and survived the first real tests. That knowledge brought a quiet confidence. He wasn't just surviving, he was asserting a presence that could not be ignored. And the legend of the new guy was quietly growing. One controlled encounter at a time. The following days in the prison brought a mix of tension, observation, and subtle testing. Inmates who had once seen the new guy as just another arrival now treated him with careful attention. His calm, controlled manner had earned him a reputation that spread quickly. Men who were known for being aggressive now hesitated when approaching him. They whispered among themselves, trying to understand what kind of man had arrived and what he was capable of. The new guy spent his days observing carefully. Every movement in the yard, every conversation, every glance mattered. He noticed the alliances, the rivalries, and the unspoken rules that governed the prison. He didn't need to engage in unnecessary conflict. Awareness alone gave him an advantage. He knew which men were likely to cause trouble and which ones preferred to stay in the background. This was as important as any physical skill he possessed. One afternoon, a few inmates attempted to provoke him while he was exercising alone. They threw verbal insults, mocking his calm demeanor, trying to get a reaction. The new guy didn't respond immediately. Instead, he continued his exercises, moving with precision and control, almost as if he were demonstrating discipline rather than fighting back. When one of them finally tried to shove him, he responded with a controlled movement, redirecting the man's force without causing injury, but leaving no doubt about his capability. The yard went silent for a few moments as onlookers watched. Realizing that the new guy's skill was not just physical but tactical, the whispers spread further. In a place where rumors travel fast, tales of his precise movements, calm control, and strategic thinking quickly became legend. Some inmates approached him cautiously, seeking guidance or trying to form alliances. Others stayed distant, realizing it was safer not to provoke him. Even the guards noticed his demeanor. While they had seen many new arrivals, few carried themselves with such quiet authority and discipline. As the week progressed, fragments of the new guy's past began to surface, though he revealed very little. Some men speculated he had a military background, others thought he might have trained in martial arts. The stories were mostly guesses, but they reinforced the growing respect and wariness surrounding him. He didn't confirm or deny anything, letting his actions speak for themselves. One evening, during a work assignment in the prison's maintenance area, a group of inmates attempted to test him collectively. They had observed his previous actions and wanted to challenge him. Believing that a coordinated effort would succeed where individuals had failed, they surrounded him, blocking exits and trying to intimidate him with both words and minor physical gestures. The new guy didn't panic. He moved slowly, analyzing their positions and behavior. When one lunged, he used a smooth, precise movement to control the man's momentum, neutralizing the threat without causing harm. The others hesitated, unsure how to approach this situation safely. The confrontation didn't escalate further, as the attackers realized that direct aggression was futile. The new guy's calm, control, and tactical skill created a barrier of respect. The other inmates backed away slowly, acknowledging, if not verbally, that he was a force to be reckoned with. Word of the incident traveled quickly, reinforcing the image of a man who could handle multiple threats at once without losing composure. During free time, the new guy continued to observe the prison's social structure. He noted which groups were dominant, which men held influence, and which conflicts were simmering beneath the surface. He didn't involve himself unnecessarily, understanding that patience and observation often provided more advantage than immediate action. By staying calm and measured, he reinforced his reputation as someone both capable and disciplined. Late one night, when the prison quieted down and the lights dimmed, the new guy reflected on the patterns he had observed. He understood the importance of mental awareness in addition to physical skill. In prison, situations could escalate quickly. And it was often the men who stayed calm and thoughtful who survived and earned respect. He had already demonstrated his ability to handle physical confrontations, and now he was building a reputation for strategic thinking and mental control. The other inmates continued to speculate about his past. Some tried to gather stories from older prisoners, piecing together fragments of his background. They spoke in hushed tones about elite combat training, military experience, and other forms of high-level skill. Even without confirmation, the tales reinforced the idea that the new guy was not ordinary. Respect, mixed with a measure of caution and fear, became the new social reality surrounding him. Over the course of several days, he faced minor challenges from individuals testing their courage or curiosity. Each encounter ended the same way, with him controlling the situation calmly, efficiently, and without unnecessary aggression. By now, the new guy had become a figure that others watched closely. His quiet confidence and disciplined movements left an impression stronger than any boastful words could. By the end of the week, a subtle shift occurred. Inmates who had once been aggressive toward newcomers now approached him differently. They spoke in respectful tones, sought guidance in minor matters, or chose to remain distant rather than provoke him. The new guy had quietly established a balance. He wasn't seeking dominance, but he commanded it through skill, observation, and restraint. As night fell, the new guy returned to his cell, reflecting on the week. He knew that the real challenges were only beginning. While he had proven himself in individual confrontations, larger tests were likely to come. Groups of inmates might attempt coordinated intimidation, and the social dynamics of the prison would continue to test him. But he felt prepared. He had the experience, the skill, and the mindset to navigate the challenges ahead. His calm presence had begun to influence the broader environment. Other inmates adjusted their behavior. Guards took note of his disciplined demeanor, and the whispers of his past created an aura that extended beyond his immediate interactions. The new guy wasn't seeking fame or fear. He was simply existing with the confidence and control that came from experience. Yet, in a place like this, that presence was powerful enough to change the way others acted around him. As the lights went out, the new guy lay on his cot, alert but relaxed. He knew the importance of balance, of awareness, and of patience. Each day brought new challenges, and he was ready to face them, using both his physical skill and his strategic mind. The legend of the newcomer continued to grow quietly, not through words, but through controlled actions that left a lasting impression on everyone who crossed his path. His reputation was no longer just whispers. It was becoming a reality that would shape the social dynamics of the prison for days to come. The tension in the prison grew steadily as the days passed. The new guy's reputation had spread like wildfire, and it was no longer just a few men who were cautious around him. Larger groups were taking notice, calculating how to deal with someone who had proven himself skilled, calm, and aware. Among them was a notorious gang leader who controlled a large faction in the prison. He had heard about the newcomer and was both curious and irritated by the growing attention the man was receiving. To him, the new guy was a challenge that could not be ignored. One afternoon, during yard time, the gang leader called together a group of trusted men. They moved strategically, positioning themselves near the new guy without attracting the guard's attention. Their plan was clear: challenge him collectively, test his skills, and assert dominance. They wanted to show the entire yard that no newcomer could disrupt the established order. No matter how skilled he appeared, the new guy entered the yard with the same calm demeanor he had displayed since his arrival. He observed the environment carefully, noting who was where, the body language of each inmate, and the subtle dynamics of tension building around him. He did not react to the whispering or the glances. He was aware, but not distracted. His awareness was quiet, controlled, and precise. As the gang leader's group approached, the atmosphere shifted. Men in the yard sensed that something significant was about to happen. The group blocked his path subtly, circling him and making verbal provocations. Their words were carefully chosen, meant to undermine confidence and provoke anger. Yet the new guy remained still, his eyes scanning, his mind calculating. He did not speak immediately. He did not react. He simply assessed. The first man lunged forward, attempting a quick strike. The new guy moved with calculated speed, sidestepping and using the man's own momentum against him. The attacker was unhurt, but thrown off balance. The others hesitated, surprised by the precision and calmness of his movements. He didn't need to shout, to threaten, or to escalate. His controlled skill was enough to stop their immediate aggression. The gang leader, frustrated, signaled for the group to attack together. They moved in unison, attempting to overwhelm him through numbers. The new guy responded with smooth, practiced movements, shifting his weight, deflecting attacks, and maintaining control. He neutralized each attempt with minimal force, demonstrating skill that was precise and efficient rather than violent. Every move he made was deliberate, and yet it seemed effortless to those watching. Inmates who had gathered to observe now watched in a mixture of awe and fear. It was clear that the new guy was trained in combat beyond what most could imagine. His actions were not only physical, they were tactical. He anticipated each attack, adjusted to the movements of multiple opponents, and kept a calm presence that unsettled even experienced fighters. The gang leader tried to assert authority verbally, shouting threats and instructions to his men. The new guy did not respond to the words, only to the physical challenges. Each time an attacker lunged, he moved with fluid precision, redirecting force, maintaining balance, and controlling the situation. Within minutes, the coordinated attempt to intimidate him failed. The attackers retreated, frustrated, confused, and impressed. They had expected dominance through numbers. But the new guy had handled the challenge with a mastery that none of them could match. Word of the confrontation spread quickly. Inmates who had witnessed the event shared the story in the yard, in cells, and wherever groups gathered. The new guy was no longer just a newcomer with calm composure. He had proven his ability to handle multiple attackers, to remain composed under pressure, and to demonstrate skill without unnecessary aggression. The legend was growing, and the gang leader, along with his faction, had to reconsider how they approached him. After the yard cleared, the new guy returned to his cell. He was alert but not tense, reflecting on the encounter. He knew that challenges in the prison would continue, but his approach remained consistent: observe, assess, control, and act only when necessary. He understood the value of restraint as much as skill, by demonstrating capability without unnecessary violence. He had maintained both safety and respect. That night, whispers and speculation filled the prison. Men debated his past, his skills, and what he might be capable of in a more serious confrontation. Some tried to piece together information from older inmates, trying to learn who he was and where his skills came from. Others simply decided it was safer to give him space. The balance of power, subtle as it was, had shifted in his favor. In the following days, minor challenges continued, but each one reinforced the same lesson. The new guy was someone to respect, not to provoke lightly. His reputation for skill, calmness, and control became a stabilizing factor in the prison's social structure. Inmates adjusted their behavior around him, and even those who were not directly involved in conflicts observed and learned from his disciplined presence. The new guy also used this period to observe more carefully. He noted patterns in how inmates formed alliances, how conflicts arose, and how power was maintained. This mental map gave him an advantage beyond physical skill. Awareness, patience, and careful observation became tools that allowed him to navigate the complex environment effectively. He was building not only a reputation but also an understanding that would serve him in future challenges. By the end of the week, the gang leaders group had stopped attempting direct confrontation. The new guy had demonstrated not only physical ability, but also a tactical mind. He had controlled situations without escalating violence, leaving attackers with little choice but to respect his presence. The prison atmosphere around him had shifted subtly. There was a mixture of curiosity, respect, and caution. As night fell, the new guy returned to his cell, alert and calm. He knew that larger challenges might come in the future, but he felt prepared. The yard had tested him, his opponents had tested him, and he had responded with skill, control, and restraint. In this environment, reputation and presence were as important as strength, and he had established both quietly but firmly. The legend of the newcomer continued to grow, and the balance of power in the prison had quietly shifted. One controlled encounter at a time, the following days in the prison were quieter, but there was an underlying tension that everyone felt. The new guy had established himself as someone not to be trifled with, and the dynamics of the yard had shifted. Men who once challenged him directly now approached with caution or kept their distance entirely. His presence alone had become a stabilizing factor, though the environment remained unpredictable. Even with his reputation growing, the new guy continued to observe quietly. He watched how alliances shifted, how conflicts arose, and how each man moved through the social structure of the prison. He took note of those who held influence, those who stayed in the background, and those who were quick to react to tension. By understanding these patterns, he maintained an advantage not through aggression, but through awareness and patience. Few inmates who had previously tried to provoke him approached him cautiously, this time seeking advice on minor issues. They asked about survival strategies, how to avoid trouble, and how to navigate the subtle hierarchy of the prison. The new guy answered briefly, calmly, and without showing any sign of superiority. He shared insights that were practical, rooted in observation and experience rather than force, teaching others indirectly about restraint, awareness, and calculated decision-making. The gang leader, who had attempted a coordinated attack before, began to approach the new guy differently. He respected the man's skills and recognized that direct confrontation would be unwise. Instead, he observed from a distance, quietly reassessing his own authority and the balance of power. This subtle acknowledgement of skill shifted the perceptions of others as well. Inmates began to understand that the new guy's presence demanded careful thought and respect, not fear alone. During yard activities, the new guy maintained a calm and disciplined presence. He moved with precision, avoided unnecessary conflicts, and responded only when absolutely necessary. On one occasion, a minor argument broke out between two inmates near him. He intervened subtly, using calm words and measured gestures to diffuse the situation without escalating it. Both men paused, realizing that confrontation was unnecessary in his presence. His influence extended beyond physical skill. It was in his demeanor, discipline, and authority. As the days passed, he also spent time in his cell, reflecting and planning. He considered not just immediate survival, but long-term strategy. Prison life required constant awareness, mental strength, and emotional control. By focusing on these aspects, he reinforced his reputation as someone who was not only capable physically, but also wise and strategic. The other inmates increasingly saw him as someone whose judgment and presence could not be ignored. Small groups of inmates began to approach him for advice on minor disputes or daily routines. They trusted his calm judgment and measured words. Even those who had previously been hostile started to listen and take cues from him. The new guy did not exploit this influence for personal gain. He maintained a balance, using his skills to maintain peace and order without showing dominance unnecessarily. Respect, rather than fear, became the currency he built. The gang leader and other influential figures quietly acknowledged his status. They realized that his calm authority and exceptional skill had altered the dynamics in the prison. Challenges that once seemed likely were now avoided. The new guy had achieved a position where others adjusted their behavior not because he demanded it, but because his presence naturally commanded awareness and consideration. One evening, a potentially volatile situation arose when a group of younger inmates started to argue loudly, attracting attention. The new guy stepped in, speaking in a calm, low voice, positioning himself so that his presence was immediately noticed. The younger men paused, recognizing the authority in his demeanor. He guided them away from escalating the argument, using precise words and subtle gestures to de-escalate the tension. Within minutes, the situation was resolved without any physical confrontation. The onlookers were impressed, noting that his influence was as much psychological as it was physical. Word of the incident spread, reinforcing his status. Inmates shared stories of how he handled situations efficiently and calmly, creating a mix of respect, curiosity, and cautious admiration. The new guy's reputation had grown beyond fear. It was now based on skill, judgment, and controlled authority. People began to understand that provoking him or underestimating him could have consequences. But they also saw that he was fair and deliberate. By the end of the week, the new guy had settled into a rhythm. He was alert, aware, and disciplined. His interactions were measured, and he had gained the trust of some while commanding respect from others. He had learned the unspoken rules of the prison and had positioned himself in a way that ensured safety without unnecessary conflict. His presence had shifted the balance subtly but significantly, earning him a quiet but undeniable place within the social hierarchy. In his cell at night, reflected on the journey so far. He knew that survival was not just about strength or skill, but about mental resilience, strategic thinking, and emotional control. Each day presented challenges, but he had proven himself capable of handling them with precision, calmness, and tact. He was not seeking recognition or dominance. He was simply navigating a complex environment with the tools he had. And in doing so, he had earned respect. The final days of that week in prison were calmer. The aggressive challenges that had initially greeted him were replaced with cautious interactions and subtle acknowledgement of his presence. The new guy's ability to maintain control remained composed, and act only when necessary had created an atmosphere where others adapted their behavior around him. Respect had been earned, not demanded, and that respect proved more enduring than fear. As he lay on his cot at night, listening to the quiet hum of the prison, he felt a sense of satisfaction. He had navigated the challenges, established his presence, and earned a reputation that would ensure his safety. The new guy was no longer just a newcomer. He was a figure who had reshaped the social dynamics around him. The legend of his skill, calmness, and strategic mind had been established, and his journey, while ongoing, had already demonstrated the power of discipline, awareness, and controlled action.